Over 60? Revealed. The 4 shocking frozen foods to avoid and 4 incredible choices for your health. Janet's heart raced as she stared at the vibrant cover of the health magazine, her hands trembling slightly. Over 60? The bold headline felt like an alarm bell ringing in the depths of her soul. Flashes of her recent hospital stay danced in her mind: sharp chest pains, the sterile aroma of antiseptic, cold steel instruments that evoked panic. The doctors had warned her. The frozen meals she had lovingly crafted from memory might not be the best choice for her family. How could she betray generations of traditions anchored in lasagna and creamy casseroles? Torn between nostalgia and newfound knowledge, Janet breathed deeply, striving to quell the unease gathering in her chest. As she rummaged through stacks of pamphlets and health articles that littered her kitchen table, Janet's heart fluttered between determination and despair. Each turn of a page revealed the harsh truths about the familiar frozen lasagna she fed her grandchildren, mystery meats, and an overload of sodium, lurking behind an enticing label. How long had she blindly relied on these meals, filling her family's plates without a second thought? The realization gnawed at her insides, each morsel now tainted with regret. Did her love mean crafting shortcuts, placing convenience over care? Questions cascaded through her mind, drowning out the comfort they once offered. Mark, her son, a steadfast symbol of the past, strode into the kitchen just as her emotions erupted into a swirl of anxiety. "Mom, why fix what isn't broken?" His voice cut through her like a knife. She glanced at him. Frustration radiated from his fixed frown. He stood rigid, arms crossed, every bit the busy attorney he was. "These meals are family traditions. What is next? Quinoa and kale. You're overreacting." In that moment, doubt and anguish threatened to consume her, not just about food, but about her role as the family powerhouse. What if they resisted? The heavy weight of unrecognized fear wrapped around her. Was she alone in this pursuit? Just when she began to surrender, a familiar voice broke through the fog. Harold, her late husband's best friend, whose laughter still echoed in their family gatherings, called with authenticity, sharing insights that ignited Janet's spirit once again. Reconnecting with him breathed life into her resolve, revealing long-forgotten family recipes that could shine with fresh, vibrant ingredients instead of the cloak of frozen fixes. Despite her excitement, family gatherings began to feel more like a test than a celebration. The clock ticked ominously as the dinner approached, her anxiety bubbling like water teetering on the edge of boiling. That evening, as she presented her healthier creations, the love in her heart mingled with trepidation. The familiar setting felt foreign, the air tense. Skeptical gazes fixed on her, with Mark's disapproving glance sending shards of self-doubt crashing down. Could this work? Would her family embrace these changes, or would she forever be seen as the one who dared disrupt their cherished legacy? Just as she mustered courage to speak, her grandchildren's laughter rang out like salvation, igniting a flicker of hope within her. Surrounded by them, she realized transforming their meals wasn't just about health. It was about opening hearts to change. But as conversations swirled and whispers of resistance took shape, Janet couldn't shake her fear. Would the dishes she created lead them into acceptance or further isolate her in her desire for evolution? Anxiety tightened her chest as uncertainty loomed. She was determined, yet she felt painfully alone, sitting at the precipice of a family tradition, questioning everything she knew and loved. The following week dawned with a flicker of hope mingling with Janet's ever-present anxiety. Each afternoon, she pored over her grandmother's handwritten recipes and research articles about nutrition, hoping to comb through the noise that marked her family's resistance. She was on a mission not just to cook healthier meals, but to reclaim her identity as the heart of the family. In those quiet moments, Janet discovered a joy she had nearly forgotten: cooking with fresh ingredients. The textures and colors breathtakingly vivid against her old, faded spatulas and mixing bowls. As she stood in her kitchen, chopping vibrant vegetables and infusing spices, the act became more than just nourishment. It was catharsis. Every slice of carrot radiated determination, while the aroma of simmering garlic felt like an embrace, fueling her conviction. The challenge soon transformed from daunting to exhilarating, as she forged a new path. However, the question remained: How to share this new world with her family without pushing them further away. Janet hesitated, cognitive dissonance gnawing at her. What if the family she loved did not want to join her? The fear of rejection cloaked her enthusiasm. With each attempt to widen her culinary experimentation, her hope teetered precariously on the edge of despair. The next family gathering swirled closer like an oncoming storm, the invitation tucked beneath her refrigerator magnet staring back at her. The thought of facing Mark's judgment again tightened her chest. She contemplated what she might present that could fit seamlessly between conventionality and revamp. Would a compromise ease tension? Looking for balance felt like walking a tightrope, each step forward muddled by her internal struggle. One evening, sitting in her favorite chair with an iced tea, Janet began brainstorming. Should she serve the familiar with a twist? What if a beloved lasagna could transform? The new lasagna crept into her mind, infused with zucchini noodles, fresh basil, and a light ricotta blend instead of the traditional heavy cheese. Perhaps subtle changes could lead the family to warm up, to not resent the evolution of their meals. Days slipped past, and Janet's excitement grew as the date approached, but shadows of doubt hung heavily. Just when she felt herself on the brink of a breakthrough, though, Mark's dismissive laughter echoed in her thoughts. Why did his expectations weigh so much? That Saturday arrived teeming with misty air, everything feeling washed clean as she prepared her new creation. Janet felt something shift within her as she diced tomatoes, each chop giving her clarity and strength. This lasagna wasn't merely a meal. It was a symbol of her unyielding spirit, signifying a respectful confrontation against entrenched habits. As her guests gathered, she laid the table meticulously, yet filled with a nervous anticipation. The evening commenced with laughter and banter, but with every bite of the lasagna, Janet dared to watch her family's reactions closely. Mark's brow furrowed, skepticism evident, as her daughter offered a cautious smile, encouraging and supportive. Moments later, a debate arose over the unexpected texture of the meal. Janet's heart raced as every eye turned to her for an explanation. It was her chance, her pivotal moment. She could succumb to fear and justify her changes, or Podia embrace the opportunity that lay ahead. Change isn't easy, she began, her voice steadier than she felt. But if we don't step out of our comfort zones ever so often, how can we grow together? The silence hung heavily, curiosity mixed with skepticism floating eerily in the air. Each moment stretched painfully as she waited for a response, both anticipation and dread rolling through her mind. Would they embrace her, or would they entrench themselves in tradition? The time had come to face the deepest fear of all, the potential dismantling of her familial legacy for something entirely new. The tension in the room felt thicker than the steam rising from the lasagna, but Janet refused to let her growing anxiety crush her newfound resolve. Each family member was a world unto themselves, and she had carefully charted out how to navigate through their responses. Would this meal serve as a bridge or a barrier? Her mind raced with possibilities, pulsing with hope but shrouded in fear. Mark shifted in his chair, arms crossed, and cast a sideways glance at his sister, who was now poking at her serving of lasagna with tentative curiosity. Janet felt those familiar tendrils of self-doubt creep back in. Was her attempt at change perceived as an affront to their traditions? Or might it represent a step forward, a shared journey of growth? "Mom, I think I like it," her daughter exclaimed, a hint of enthusiasm lighting her eyes. "It's different but good." Janet could feel the flicker of resolve that had ignited within her. This was her moment to build on that spark, to challenge the naysayers cloaked in familial familiarity. "Thank you, honey," Janet replied, directing her attention away from Mark's scrutinous gaze. She seized the opportunity to expand on her culinary mission. "I wanted to try something that's a bit healthier, something we could enjoy together. Meals can bring us together and support our health, too." Mark rolled his eyes as he half-heartedly took another bite, but Janet refused to let the look of disdain hide the spark of necessity that burned deep within her. The votes against her were loud, but the chance her daughter took emboldened her further. Janet knew she had to challenge this resistance head-on. Can we really ignore the fact that a lot of our favorites can take a toll on our health? Janet pressed, her voice rising slightly. Don't we owe it to ourselves to consider what we eat? It's not just about food. It's about our well-being. It's about family. This plea ignited a whirling storm of responses across the table. The skeptics dissected the texture and flavor, dissecting every ingredient like the meal itself was a foreign entity threatening to invade their traditions. Yet amidst the skepticism, there were flickers of interest. Questions bubbled about the zucchini noodles, and her sister caught on to the conversation, excitedly asking how she had spiced the sauce. Janet felt herself brimming with confidence as the discussion swelled. It was exhilarating to witness curiosity overshadowing skepticism, as the dialogue shifted toward exploring new flavor profiles rather than merely dismissing them. What if we made this a thing? A culinary adventure for family dinners? She suggested, trying to steer the conversation towards inclusion. In a whirlwind of boldness, she proposed an idea. What if we take turns cooking, and every week someone tries to introduce something healthy into our meals? It doesn't have to be a complete overhaul. Just small changes. Mark frowned, visibly torn. I guess it could be interesting, but what about our flavor? What is wrong with the way we do things now? Janet took a deep breath, sensing it might just be breaking the dam of resistance. Nothing is wrong, she reassured him. But I believe we can improve our meals without sacrificing what we love. The room fell silent again, weighed down by a few contemplative moments shared. Janet's heart raced. Could she have sown the seeds of transformation? But her thoughts swirled amidst the tension. Mark's gaze bore into hers, his conflicted expression suggesting the battle between tradition and change remained unresolved. Let me know, he muttered, quiet but filled with a hint of unwilling curiosity. The evening unfolded with timid possibilities, but it marked the beginning of a new chapter for Janet. She would not just cook. She would pave the way forward, though uncertainty loomed large. This was the threshold of her journey, opening pathways toward reshaping family traditions. Yet the thrill of victory clashed with the reminder that battles had only begun. Acceptance would not come easily. Janet sighed heavily as she cleaned up, pondering how far this transformation could reach. The core question had emerged: was she strong enough to withstand the personal and push the professional boundaries that remained unclear? Tomorrow would bring clarity, or perhaps the elusive resolve. The invitation to challenge comfort zones had been extended. Janet just hoped her family was ready to embrace it. Would they join her quest, or would she be dancing alone amidst these uncertain culinary realms? In the days that followed, Janet awoke each morning with an ever-growing determination. Coffee brewed, and as the caffeine coursed through her veins, she felt invigorated by the possibilities ahead. She held tight to the memory of that evening. The cautious curiosity on her daughter's face had ignited a fire within her, and she refused to let it extinguish. At work, she approached her tasks with renewed vigor. Her colleagues couldn't help but notice the subtle shift in her demeanor. No longer did she spiral into self-doubt when ideas were dismissed. Instead, she engaged with confidence, presenting her thoughts with a newfound clarity that compelled others to take heed. Conversations flowed deeper. She invited discussions on wellness in the workplace, challenging her coworkers to join her in exploring healthier snacks during meetings. Let us replace the usual chips with some homemade hummus and veggie sticks, she suggested during a group brainstorming session. Instead of the typical eye-roll reaction, her boss nodded thoughtfully. That could be interesting, he said. A simple acknowledgement ignited a pulse of hope within her. It was a small victory, but it contrasted with her family's ambivalence toward her culinary ambitions. The duality of her life, one fraught with familial resistance and the other blossoming with professional engagement, began to weigh on Janet. During lunch hours, she maintained her resolve, 5 days a week replacing the sugary snacks with vibrant fruits and nuts. Her colleagues soon joined in, creating a small environment of shared wellness each lunch break. Yet their enthusiasm felt like a stark paradox to the skepticism at home. As family meals rolled around, Janet ventured forward with a plan. She decided to elevate her cooking by integrating themes: Italian night, Asian fusion, or Mediterranean feasts. Each meal would not only showcase health-conscious ingredients, but also feature a deliberate nod to their long-standing traditions. The act of combining the familiar with the new served as her strategic framework to overcome the growing unease with change. Dad used to make his famous lasagna with cream sauce, she would say, her voice enthusiastic as she crafted zucchini lasagna. What if we try turkey instead of beef? It'll be just as flavorful. Though the whispers of doubt remained present, Janet's spirit did not waver. After several weeks of culinary compromises, Janet sensed the atmosphere watchfully shifting, perhaps not radically, but incrementally. Occasionally, a family member would voice interest about a particular dish or suggest a new recipe to try. Yet beneath this notable progress laid an unshakable tension, expertly masked by their evolving exchanges. Mark remained largely unmoved, his attempts to revise even the slightest change feeling like a barricade to their collective exploration. Janet could perceive that he felt cornered by her advances against tradition, a reaction she had begun to unpack during her moments of quiet reflection. Was her advancement toward health truly a threat to the family's identity, or was Mark grappling with insecurities of his own? The realization struck her with the force of clarity. Perhaps his resistance had little to do with the food and everything to do with discomfort. She knew this was a conversation worth having, one that could potentially emerge from the comfort of their shared kitchen or over dinner. And so, she sat with her journal that evening, pen in hand. How can I frame this conversation? She pondered, the pages waiting to capture her evolving thoughts. As she drafted her approach, the haunting possibility of failure loomed. Could she bridge that personal gap without tearing apart the fabric of their traditions? With a heavy heart, she realized the moment had arrived to confront her brother directly, to unravel the resistance speckled with familial love. But just as that thought solidified, she heard a knock on her door. A flutter of anticipation ignited within her. Perhaps tonight would unveil the path forward she so desired. Would it be Mark? Would the seeds she had sown over the past weeks take root? The fateful encounter loomed, promising to redefine the future of their culinary journey. Janet sat up straighter in her chair, smoothing out the pages of her journal as she listened intently to the knock at the door. It felt like a summons from fate, urging her to embrace the confrontation that had been lingering in the air between her and Mark. She took a deep breath, mentally steadying herself as she considered the possible outcomes. Mark stepped through the door, his expression a mixture of curiosity and reservation. "Hey," he said, glancing around her room, cluttered yet organized, a mirror of the mental chaos intertwining with her newfound clarity. "Hey," she replied, waving him in. As he settled onto the edge of her bed, the weight of the moment pressed upon them. It was time to delve beneath the surface of the casual exchanges they had been sharing over dinner. "Can we talk?" she asked, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "Sure," he said cautiously, his eyes betraying a hint of apprehension. Janet felt the adrenaline surge as she rode the wave of determination that had propelled her these past weeks. She began with the small victories, the shifts at work, the enthusiasm of her colleagues. "It's really been amazing, Mark. The way the team has embraced these healthy changes," she started, hoping to disarm him with a shared success. But Mark shifted in his seat, his posture tight as he responded. "That's great. But I don't see why you have to change everything with food, too." The words stung, echoing the doubt she had grappled with since embarking on this culinary journey. "I know it feels like change," she said softly, gauging his reaction. "But I'm not trying to erase our traditions. I just want us to explore healthier options together. Why fix something that isn't broken? We've been doing fine," he replied defensively, his brow furrowed as he wrestled with the implications of her words. She pressed on, her pulse quickening. "But what if being fine isn't enough? What if we could thrive? It's not about punishing ourselves. It's about loving our bodies and our family. Can't we try?" A moment of silence stretched between them, heavy with unsaid thoughts. Janet could see his wall of resistance starting to show cracks, yet she knew that wisdom wasn't forged in the absence of conflict. "You've changed how you approach your life, and it seems to work for you," he said, the words tinged with confusion. "But what about me? What if I don't want to change?" "Maybe it's not about you changing who you are," she offered gently, "but expanding who we can be as a family. To step outside our comfort zones together." Mark's silence threatened to consume the discussion. In that moment, Janet realized he felt cornered, much like she had felt for years. She could feel the spark of frustration bubbling inside her again, but she refused to let it surface. "What do you really think, Mark?" she probed, her voice steady. "What do you fear about this change?" His defenses began to lower as he stared out the window, the outside light casting shadows across his thoughtful face. "I guess I'm scared I'll lose what we have. The silliness around dinner, those traditions. They mean something to me." Janet felt the enormity of his vulnerability. "And I don't want to lose those memories either," she reassured him. They're important. But embracing new traditions doesn't erase the old ones. We can add to our landscape, not clear it. With a deep breath, he finally met her gaze, the horror of confrontation replaced by a sliver of understanding. So what do we do to find this middle ground? In that instant, hope ignited within Janet. She was ready to propose a family cooking night, a weekly experiment blending their past with the potential for new routines. As they began to discuss the logistics, part of her still felt the weight of uncharted territory, knowing that this was just the beginning. The conversation opened doors, but it also hinted at the challenges they would face. What if old habits proved harder to break? Would Mark resist again? Her heart raced at the potential of further familial discontent. Yet, deep down, she felt empowered, armed with the knowledge that confronting discomfort could blossom into growth. Tonight marked a turning point, but the path ahead invoked both excitement and trepidation. The urge to push forward glittered with uncertainty. What would emerge from the cooking nights? Would they bond further or unleash a deeper miscommunication? Only time would tell, but Janet was ready to embrace the journey. The following week unfolded like a tense tapestry as Janet and Mark initiated their family cooking night. The kitchen buzzed with a concoction of excitement and uncertainty, each sizzle echoing the potential for both triumph and miscommunication. Janet had planned a Mediterranean-inspired menu, hoping the vibrant flavors would draw them together rather than carve them apart. They gathered ingredients, and Janet felt a tight knot of anticipation form in her stomach as she realized this was more than just cooking. It was a test of their resolve as a couple. The first challenge appeared almost immediately, a mundane moment elevated by rolling tension. As she chopped vegetables, Mark hovered over the cutting board, the air thick with unspoken doubts. "What's wrong?" Janet ventured, her hands steady but her heart racing. She could see him weighing his words, an internal battle playing across his face, a blend of desire and resistance. "Do we have to use whole wheat pasta? It feels unnecessary," he finally declared, a hint of frustration creeping into his voice. Janet paused, aware that a simple ingredient choice had triggered something deeper. The interaction unearthed the core of Mark's apprehension. "It's just one change, one step. We can still enjoy the meal. It's about experimenting, right?" But his brows knitted together in confusion. "It feels like you're trying to fix something that's not broken," he replied, the defensiveness resurfacing. She took a breath, the weight of her commitment pressing against her chest. "What if we don't think of it as fixing? What if we see it as enhancing? Our health is part of embracing who we are." He sighed, frustration bubbling just beneath the surface. Watching him struggle ignited something within Janet, a reminder of her own journey. She had battled doubt and fear. This was his version of that fight. "Okay," Mark said after an unsettling pause, his tone softer but weighed down by uncertainty. "Let us try it your way." The concession, though hesitant, marked a small victory in their partnership, a shift within the balance of their dynamic. As they prepared the meal, Janet noticed more subtle moments emerging from the chaos. They danced around each other, playfully tossing ingredients into bowls, laughter punctuating the air. The kitchen felt like a lively art studio where creation was messy and beautiful. Yet the shadow of doubt continued to linger over her. Was this enough to forge a genuine change? Could she feel proud of this culinary journey when she often felt like she was dragging Mark unwillingly into the light? After plating the meal, they gathered around the table. The spread was vibrant and colorful, yet Janet's stomach churned with nerves. As they took the first bites, she looked to Mark, searching his expression for any hint of approval. At first, he chewed in silence, his gaze flicking between his plate and the reminiscence of their established dinners. Finally, he looked up, a hesitant smile breaking through. "This isn't bad." Relief washed over her. "So we add this to the repertoire?" "Sure, I suppose," he replied, although his voice lacked enthusiasm. She could tell he still held reservations, thoughts hidden beneath the surface of his acceptance. In the deepening dusk, as their conversation began to flow, Janet felt a pulse of hope. However, that hope bore the weight of uncertainty. Their familial connection still danced close to contention. What would it take for this new routine to feel less like an uphill struggle and more like a shared discovery? The post-meal rush of satisfaction quickly faded as the reality of their underlying tensions reminded her of the complexities inherent in growth. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking on a tightrope, naive to the depth of feelings buried beneath their actions. As they cleaned up, each clattering dish echoed a lingering question in Janet's mind. Would this initial victory sustain them through future challenges, or was it merely an ephemeral flicker in a much longer journey? It struck her then while Mark adjusted to this culinary shift. She had her own fears bubbling beneath the surface. Were they truly navigating these changes together, or was she still holding onto the reins too tightly, leading rather than collaborating? That night, as she lay in bed, the gravity of her realizations thrummed beneath her skin. The complexities of change were far from over. What deeper truths would emerge in the kitchen next week? And as Janet envisioned their next family dinner, one question reverberated through her thoughts. Would their pursuit of health unify them or unravel hidden tensions further? The stakes felt impossibly high, and uncertainty loomed over the horizon. The week that followed felt like a silent war with the clock, each tick marking her growing anxiety about the next cooking night. Janet spent her evenings poring over recipes, an almost desperate attempt to create a menu that not only aligned with her vision for health, but also respected Mark's burgeoning willingness to be part of this culinary transformation. It felt like a balancing act on a high wire, her focus shifting between their evolving relationship and her commitment to healthy living. As the day approached, she sensed anticipation and dread intertwining deeply within her. Cooking had become a battleground, where each ingredient represented a choice to either deepen their bond or drive a wedge between them. She had envisioned this as an opportunity for them to revitalize their connection, yet doubt gnawed at her. Was she trying to revolutionize their meals? Or worse, was she subtly attempting to reshape Mark? When the evening arrived, Janet stood in the kitchen, the air thick with tension as she prepared a quinoa salad and grilled chicken, infused with lemon and herbs. The vibrant colors of the ingredients called out to her like a promise, but her thoughts were clouded. Would this selection feel like an extension of their relationship or a superficial layer that could crack under pressure? Not again, she murmured when Mark walked in, his face displaying familiar apprehension. What is it this time? He asked, eyeing the quinoa disapprovingly. It's just a base, Mark. We can add flavors, textures. It's about experimenting, remember? Janet couldn't help but feel defensive. Behind every culinary choice lingered the shadow of her intention, a necessity to evolve. She wanted him to be excited, to share in the thrill as she had begun to. But was he even capable of that? As they prepared dinner, they fell into a rhythm, though it felt strained. Instead of the previous week's playful repartee, they navigated around each other with care, the silence punctuated only by clattering pots and sizzling food. Each moment teetered on the brink of being fruitful or fraught, like a fragile glass sculpture teetering on the edge of a table. Do you really think this is going to be good? Mark's skepticism wrapped around each word, constricting Janet's heart. It'll be better if we think of it as an adventure, she replied, but the conviction in her voice felt weak even to her. Dinner finally came to fruition, laid out in an appealing manner, yet the atmosphere remained tinged with hesitation. As they sat down, Janet found herself silently urging Mark to take the first bite. Would he see what she saw? The potential to change together? To her relief, he took a bite, considering as he chewed. But instead of the anticipated smile, she was met with a frown. It's different, he admitted, his honesty raw but not exactly encouraging. Her heart plummeted. Different can also mean good, she pushed back. But even as she spoke, clarity hit her. Different didn't always equal better in the context of comfort and familiarity. The conversation that unfolded was stiff, with pauses heavier than ever. Every exchange started to dredge up the emotional undercurrents that they both avoided. Janet's determination to create a health-centric environment clashed violently with Mark's longing for tradition. I just don't understand why we can't stick with what we know, he confessed at one point, his voice tinged with frustration. I mean, what's wrong with pasta and garlic bread? Lost in her own reflections, Janet caught a glimmer of what lay beneath the surface for both of them. It's not just about food, is it? It's about everything. Change is daunting, isn't it? He looked at her, the weight of their collective uncertainties hanging heavy in the air between them. By acknowledging the underlying fear, she reached out to him, meeting him at a place of vulnerability. As they cleaned up, Janet realized that their dinner had been less about experimenting with health and more about understanding each other. She had intended to unite them through change, but perhaps continuity had its own value, one she now recognized. In that moment of clarity, a new resolve began to form within her. This journey wouldn't be a linear path. It would be a series of intricate pivots between change and comfort, a dance that required both partners to truly participate. What possibilities could unfold if they embraced both elements together? And as Janet considered their next cooking night, she couldn't help but wonder, how could she honor their past while also forging a new path? The stakes felt significant, and a creeping uncertainty began anew. Could they find common ground amidst the chaos of their changing lives? The following week felt like a delicate dance of memories and hopes, each day drawing her closer to their next cooking night while saturating her with uncertainty. With Mark still reeling from their last dinner, Janet felt the pressure to somehow craft an experience that would lift the fragility hanging between them. It was becoming increasingly vital that she learned how to navigate the subtle currents of their relationship without losing herself in the process. Janet's evenings had transformed into a dual mission: research healthy recipes while also reconnecting with her roots. She began to explore the origins of the dishes she loved, a genuine homage to the nostalgia that often dictated their meals. Each recipe became a story, and as she read, she envisioned ways to incorporate elements that would resonate with Mark. She wanted to honor the culinary traditions he cherished while also rescuing them from the gravitational pull of comfort food. Yet, each attempt felt like balancing on the edge of a knife. What if she was trying to impose her tastes at the cost of his? A sinking doubt crept in. Had she turned cooking into a symbol of her desire to control their relationship? Shouldn't food, in its essence, be an expression of love rather than a battleground for beliefs and preferences? On that fateful cooking night, as she stood before the array of fresh ingredients, she resolved to tread carefully, to focus on bringing joy rather than crafting an elaborate transformation. The menu was simple: a savory vegetable stir-fry paired with quinoa. Janet hoped its vibrant hues would evoke warmth rather than apprehension. When Mark stepped into the kitchen, his expression mirrored a reluctant intrigue. His gaze flickered over the ingredients, lingering on the quinoa as if it were a stranger. "Trying quinoa again?" he asked with a hint of playfulness in his voice, a thin veil over his habitual skepticism. "I thought it would pair well with the stir-fry," Janet replied, meeting his gaze with a smile that carried both trepidation and excitement. They moved together in a strange harmony, chopping and stirring, the atmosphere crisp with the smell of garlic sizzling in the pan. When a spice-laden aroma enveloped them, a sense of anticipation uncoiled itself within Janet. Perhaps this evening could lead to deeper conversations, an authentic dialogue beyond the food itself. As they sat down to eat, she caught herself holding her breath, waiting for his first taste. This time, the initial bite was accompanied by silence rather than hesitation. Mark chewed thoughtfully, and Janet found herself blurring the lines between his expression and her own insecurities. Was he grimacing? Was that a hint of disappointment? "This is new," he finally uttered, breaking the quiet. "New can be good, right?" she said gently, trying to evoke trust, trying to transform this moment into a story rather than an interrogation. He nodded slowly, and a soft tension persisted in the air. "Can we try to use ingredients we both like next time?" he suggested, cautious yet hopeful. Janet's heart squeezed with both relief and insight. Perhaps the rapport she longed to forge didn't require revolution. Perhaps it was about building a bridge, one small choice at a time. "Absolutely. Let us blend our favorites," she offered, realizing that compromise could be as nourishing as the meals they created. In that moment, Janet saw a path ahead, a delicate balance of respect and willingness to adapt, both to traditional comforts and to the new explorations they would embark on together. She had reforged a bit of their history with sheer determination, yet she also acknowledged that challenges lay ahead. As thoughts about their next lesson in the kitchen flooded her mind, a question lured her breath. How would they cultivate a dining experience that honored each other's tastes without undermining their desire for growth? The stakes remained high, the culinary journey only just beginning. Would they venture deeper into each other's tastes and fears, or would they retreat to the familiar comforts that proudly adorned their table? Janet stepped into the kitchen once again, the usual excitement mingled with a renewal of apprehension. She had spent days contemplating Mark's suggestion, weighing the implications of creating a shared culinary experience. It wasn't just about fusion dishes anymore. It was about collaboration, a dance of flavors that represented both of their worlds. With a slight transformation in her approach, Janet decided to ask Mark for his preference. She envisioned their first step toward progress, a joint exploration of their individual tastes. The idea of inviting him into her refined culinary journey sent a thrill through her. She could feel the apprehension beginning to dissolve, replaced by curiosity about how his preferences would enhance the dishes she cherished. The evening arrived, and as Mark entered, she noticed a hint of eagerness beneath the familiar skepticism that always danced around his demeanor. "Ready to cook?" he asked, a flicker of excitement softening the usual edge in his voice. Before they began, Janet took a deep breath. "How about we start by talking through some ingredients? I want this to reflect both of us." She saw a slight furrow in his brow, as if the idea challenged a foundation he hadn't been willing to question. But she pressed on. "For me, cooking has always been a way to express who I am, but I wanted to feel that way for you too." Mark paused, visibly contemplating her words. "Okay, I like that idea. How about we make tacos? They can be filled with so many options," he suggested, his face lighting up with inspiration. "Tacos sound great. We can use fresh veggies and maybe even some grilled chicken. What do you think?" Janet replied, her spirits lifting. He nodded, already diving into the fridge to scout for ingredients, while she took on the task of pulling out the spices and sauces. As they worked side by side, the conversation flowed more freely than it had in days. They began to share their feelings about food. Mark reminisced about childhood family dinners, while Janet recounted her struggles with school lunches. Each story shared felt like a stepping stone toward a greater understanding of each other, forming a channel through which their personalities could blend. Janet found herself increasingly captivated by Mark's enthusiasm. He demonstrated a confidence in seasoning the chicken, a skill she hadn't seen from him before. It was a revelation that caught her off guard. It struck her that Mark, with his oft-asserted preferences, had hidden culinary talents she hadn't appreciated until now. Yet, her joy was complicated by the creeping concern that with every new dish, with every shared preference, they would be forced to confront the deeper layers of their relationship. The stakes felt tangible. What if compromising on ingredients led to compromises in their trust? What if his passion revealed aspects of himself that would create friction rather than harmony? "I really like this," Mark said, savoring a bite of the seasoned chicken, his approval tangible in the warmth of his smile. "Me too," she said, her voice mere whisper of the thoughts clashing inside. In that moment, she realized engagement meant vulnerability, a willingness to share not just flavors, but fears. It wasn't about relinquishing her identity, it was about evolving together. But just as she was beginning to embrace this evolution, a knot twisted in her stomach, reminding her of old patterns that clung stubbornly to their relationship. Could they both truly walk this line of mutual respect? The evening unfolded with laughter and flavors, yet as Mark leaned in to share a new idea for their next meal, a sharp anxiety danced at the back of Janet's mind. How far could they go before the flavors stopped blending harmoniously? What unseen divide still lay beneath? As Mark continued discussing possibilities, Janet's resolve strengthened. The next step was evident. They needed to confront the underlying tensions that simmered just beneath the surface. Would exposing their culinary choices lead to a more profound understanding, or would the recipe for change expose the fractures in their relationship? On the brink of discovering a shared future, Janet felt the exhilarating pull toward the unknown, beckoning her to act. The following week unfolded like a tapestry woven with hope and tension, each day drawing Janet closer to the next family cooking night, yet weaving uncertainty deep into her thoughts. As the day approached, she felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. It was crucial that they cultivate an experience that fostered unity rather than strife. Her vision was clear, a family meal that honored both her commitment to health and Mark's fondness for tradition. On the afternoon of the dinner, Janet found herself standing in the kitchen, contemplating her approach. With the refrigerator filled with fresh ingredients, she embraced a light yet determined perspective, ready to honor their relationship's evolution. This week, she settled on a theme: fiesta night. The idea welcomed bright colors and vibrant flavors, aiming to create a bridge between their culinary worlds. She prepared tacos, allowing everyone to choose their fillings and invitation to customize that she hoped would make each family member feel at home among the new dishes. As the clock slid toward dinner time, Janet felt her heart race, a reminder of the stakes involved in this simple yet profound endeavor. She took a brief moment to gather her thoughts. This meal wasn't merely a culinary experiment. It was an opportunity to reshape their family narrative. When her family gathered around the table, a wave of nervous anticipation washed over her. Surrounded by laughter, she began to serve the taco components, savoring the colorful spread. Mark looked intrigued, a softness in his expression revealing the curiosity that had often been buried under his resistance. "Looks amazing, Mom. I love the tacos," her daughter exclaimed, diving in with enthusiasm. Janet beamed, encouraged by the initial positive response. She shared the stories of the ingredients, explaining the zest of lime and the crunch of fresh peppers in an attempt to weave memories into their meal. Mark, still cautious, filled his taco but hesitated before his first bite. Janet's heart quickened. This was the defining moment that could steer the evening in either direction. The tension hung in the air like the vapor from warm flour tortillas. With a deep breath, he took a bite. The crunch broke the silence, and an unexpected smile illuminated his features. "You know what? This is really good. I wasn't too sure about the guacamole at first, but it adds great flavor." Her heart swelled with pride. They were making headway, creating a dialogue out of the dinner experience. One conversation led to another as anecdotes floated around the table, recollections from family gatherings past intermingled with laughter about quirky food preferences. Slowly, Janet felt the warmth of connection blanket the space, dissolving the barriers that had once divided their culinary worlds. With each comment and shared smile, Janet noticed how her confidence began to blossom, the result of standing firm in her resolve to embrace change while honoring family tradition. The evening flowed seamlessly, her presence pulsating with the acknowledgement that this wasn't just about food. It symbolized nourishment for her family's connection. Reflecting on their culinary journey together, it became clear that the real battle lay in the acceptance of change, not just in the ingredients or dishes, but in their hijacked perceptions of each other. As the laughter crescendoed and stories poured forth, Janet felt the tension ease, supplanted by an understanding, a commitment to collaborative exploration. "Next week, can we make something with pasta?" Mark requested spontaneously. The question hung in the air as all eyes turned to Janet. She felt a rush of exhilaration mixed with apprehension. Pasta was a staple, yet she had been reimagining healthier alternatives. "Of course, we could try vegetable noodles or even whole grain pasta. What do you think?" she suggested, treading carefully as she introduced the possibility of blending their tastes. "Vegetable noodles sound interesting. I can get behind that," he replied, his tone lifting, nudging forward a sense of collaboration rather than just compliance. As the evening wound down, Janet took a moment to appreciate the transformation that had taken place not just with the meal, but within their relationship. They had initiated a dynamic shift from rigid adherence to tradition toward an evolving narrative, one that encouraged exploration rather than resistance. Janet felt expansive pride swell within her, a mix of accomplishment and growth. She had proven to both herself and her family that she could merge past and present, culinary and personal, with intentionality and love. As the gathering closed, and she began clearing the table, Janet recognized that this victory was a building block, leading her family down a path rich with potential. With renewed courage and a firm foundation of understanding, she was ready to embrace whatever came next. Ultimately, this journey had not simply been about altering family meals. It was about redefining their relationship. Each flavor, each bite, served as a reflection of the shared commitment to growth and acknowledgement that change could coexist within the tapestry of family tradition. In this newfound clarity, Janet stood resolute, a transformational embodiment of embraces made, traditions respected, and future possibilities explored. She was ready to nurture both their health and her family ties. Therein lay her greatest achievement, a genuine triumph over the reluctant confines of the past. As she rested her hands on the counter, she knew that the culinary journey was only just beginning. In that moment of reflection, she felt hopeful for the challenges ahead, confident that as long as they shared the table, they could continue to create meals steeped in love, exploration, and growth, a celebration of both yesterday and tomorrow. Now, in this critical moment, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to show your support.